it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I have to tell you, I have been looking forward to this interview. When I first was connected to Sonia a while ago through a former podcast guest, through people I know who she knows, and it's one of those 6 degrees of separation in New York City. When I learned about her background, I said, oh my goodness, I have to talk to this person. And then I'm going to be a complete disclosure. Sonia Kostich, I will say I got on our call the first time and I was starstruck. And let me tell you why. Okay. So listeners, for those of you who have listened to her success story for a long time, you will have heard that I grew up dancing. I grew up in the New York City area, and I danced from about 3 years old to about 23 on a very different journey than Sonia did. But in my teens, I went to see the American Ballet Theater every season with a subscription. And so Sonia comes to us today with a background as a professional dancer, but with over 2 decades, as well as significant business acumen from going to not just getting her college degree at 42, but going on to working at Goldman Sachs. She was then, I could go on and on and on, and Sonia's going to share a little bit about her backstory and her journey. I was starstruck, Sonia, as I welcome you to the show, because I was a fan and an idol. Baryshnikov was a childhood, I had that poster in my room. I had the background and journey through a dance career and blowing out my knee at 23 and working in the business career and building a business career for myself. And your journey and reading your background is so inspiring to me. Let alone, so thank you for joining me on Her Success Story, and thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Thank you so much, Ivy. I'm so happy to be here speaking with you.
And I will say I need your help because I know I mispronounced your last name. So it's Sonia
Kostich. Yeah.
Kostich.
You were right.
Oh, not that bad. So share a little bit. So you're a dancer. You grew up in the Midwest. Share a little bit about your background and coming to New York.
Sure. So I was actually born in Seoul, South Korea, and I was adopted at the age of 2 by 2 absolutely incredible individuals who I really attribute to why I have the wonderful life that I have. And as you say, I grew up in Minnesota, in a suburb of Minneapolis. And from a very young age, was sort of immersed in the arts. Both of my parents were big supporters and loved the arts. So, I played the violin, played the piano, ballet. My mom used to joke and say that the dancing stuck with me because I didn't have to practice at home. But I do think that there was something about live performance and the theater that really just connected and resonated with me so much as a young child. And I mentioned this earlier to you, but my mother tells me a story about when I came from Korea that I had a sign around my neck. I was adopted from an orphanage, and the sign said, "Seems to like music." So I think I got paired with the perfect parents who put me immediately into all sorts of artistic activities that, music played such a big role. So I started dancing when I was very young, studying ballet at Minnesota Dance Theater. And at the age of 15, I moved to New York City by myself, which is, I can't believe now when I think back on it, to study at SAB, the School of American Theater for New York City Ballet. My second year in New York City, Misha Baryshnikov started a ballet school that was associated with ABT. Right. American Ballet Theater. And it was a really special school. There were only 8 female students and 5 male students.
That is a big deal. It was a big deal to be recruited and pulled out and invited in to an opportunity. And that's amazing.
It was really an amazing experience. And I'm still very close friends with a lot of those students. We were a very tight-knit group. And it was very exciting, similar to you. I had the poster, the Baryshnikov, growing up in my room. It was an amazing experience. I was in that school for 1 year, and then Misha actually hired me into ABT and gave me my very first job as a professional ballet dancer. So that sort of started my professional career as a dancer, and has, we'll talk about then, the sort of the steps leading forward.
So, dance is one of those professions that we don't have long careers. I was literally watching a hockey game. My husband was an ice hockey player young in his life. So we were watching a hockey game on television last night. And I'm always asking, like, how old is this person? And right? There's careers out there that do not have, in the performance art and the performing arts, as well as in sports. Dance is a kind of like a blink of an eye, it seems.
It is, and it requires so much from you as a person. First, as a child, I mean, even as a child, and I know there's so many young aspiring dancers out there, but even as a child it requires so much from you. I mean, you're going to classes every single day, and your mind and everything about it is so focused and devoted, and it really carries through childhood, as a teenager, those years that one would go off to college, and then the actual professional life, like you say, is very short. You're looking at late teens, early 20s through maybe mid 30s. Every moment and every minute counts. And I think that's part of the devotion and the dedication and the focus, in addition to the fact that, it's obviously a very difficult, skill that needs to be constantly worked on and cultivated. But it is a short career. And I think, for so many ballet dancers, figuring out what that next step is, inevitable.
When it was time for you to take the next step, those are big decisions, and they're not easy decisions. And I will say, for me, I'll share, I believe a large part of my success in business is my early training as a dancer. Yet, when we're at that crossroads of a decision, it's not easy.
No,
What was
absolutely.
that crossroads like for you, and how did you decide to actually then go to college?
Sure. So, I think it's a challenge that every dancer faces when they start, getting to the end of their professional career on the stage. But as you mentioned, so much of the training to become a professional ballet dancer requires certain soft skills that you develop over decades. When I got towards my late 30s, I realized I really needed to seriously start thinking about that next step. But it was extremely challenging. And also to just keep in mind, my professional dance career took place at a time when there was no internet, no social media, no smartphones. And so getting information about what was out there in the world was just even more challenging. I did dance professionally for over 20 years. So
Wow.
taking that next step and figuring out what to do with the rest of your life, when as a ballet dancer you are sort of categorized as older, but in life you are really still quite young, right?
Exactly. And it's interesting because you feel like you're aging out, yet to the rest of the world, you're so young. But as you're referencing, you did 20 years. So you had a true lifetime of experience.
Sure, and I mean, I'm so grateful for that career, and it took me all over the world. I toured all over the world. I lived in multiple different places, and it was just an incredible experience that all, is very additive towards now where I find myself in my life professionally as well. So, as you mentioned, I was around 38 when I realized I really needed to make some hard choices. And so, the last thing I did in my professional dance career was I had started a small modern dance company with a colleague of mine. And we ran that for 6 years. It was small, but it was successful. And it made me realize how much I really enjoyed being a leader and being a director. And so,
You got that experience of building something. You get to choreograph sometimes as a dancer, but you're very much always being instructed too. And
correct.
sounds to me like was your opportunity to see what you can build and what that experience is like.
Yes, and that it was such a great experience because as you say, very much as a ballet dancer, you are following direction. And suddenly being on the other side where you were able to see ideas brought to life was very exciting. And so I had not gone to college at the time when, is
Okay.
generally the time period when one would go because I got into ABT when I was still in high school. So at 38, I went to undergrad and I got an accounting degree. And it was, just unbelievably exciting and I mean, it was the hardest thing I've ever done, I think, in my life. And when I say that and people compare it to being a ballet dancer, their eyebrow goes up and they ask questions. But it truly was because I had never been in that world before or used that side of my brain or, really put myself in that situation. But as it turned out, I absolutely loved it. It was incredible. And being able to find that other part of myself was very exciting because I didn't know it existed. I didn't know I was capable of it. And to be honest, I had a lot of fear before going in that direction because I was so comfortable and accustomed to a certain way of life, a certain professional atmosphere, a certain environment, and to go into something completely unknown without knowing if I would be good at it or not. A huge uncertainty ahead of me. It was very daunting, I have to
It's
say.
it, it is very daunting whenever we put ourselves in a completely unknown situation. I think about years ago, my son at turning 18. So he wasn't 18 yet. So I signed the permission slip for him to go skydiving. And he was doing this on a trip that, like a teen trip. And so he was going to be halfway around the world. He wouldn't be 18 when he jumped. And I'm like, when I did that, I was like, who's more scared, me signing this slip or him? And after I said, wherever you are, I don't care where you are in this world, you need to call me when you land. And I said, what was that experience like? He goes, it was so unknown. It was so unknown. And he goes, I knew I was safe. I knew I went through the safety thing and I knew I was jumping in tandem the first time. I was scared out of my mind. And he goes, and then it started and it was the most life-changing experience. And that's as I'm hearing you talk is the visual that just came to mind for me.
Absolutely. And taking that step into the unknown and being open really to reinvention of yourself and of your life and everything that you know. But it was the best thing I could have done. And I'm so grateful to have had, sort of a support system around me to encourage me and to know that I wasn't alone in all of this and to be able to take that step, it changed my life.
I would wonder, from the place of curiosity, how many professional dancers end up at Goldman Sachs?
Well, I think it's rare, but I also think that, the word is getting out now. You're finding more and more that dancers are preparing and realizing, that a career as a professional dancer is finite. And there are tools out there now. You can take online classes and, being a professional dancer is a full-time job. And you are in the studio or in the theater from morning till night. So it's not like you have a lot of excess additional time to spare, but there are things now that are being created to really try to support dancers, which I think is incredible. And dancers are so smart, and they have the energy and the diligence, I think, to really be able to handle more than one thing. And so I think you'll start seeing, this trend, if you want to say, of dancers when they find themselves retiring from the stage, finding fulfilling and exciting life, second careers.
So I find it fascinating. First of all, I happen to say I love that. And I'm thrilled by that information because it was not in my time, it wasn't easy to have that. It was either you were categorized as one or the other. And I remember my parents, I was not at your proficiency in my teens, and I went on to get a degree in dance. And they said, you can get a degree in dance, but you have to get a degree in something that's going to pay a bill in life. Hindsight is 2020. Long story short, I'm very grateful for that. your career is so interesting because you have gone on to build the merger. And that's when, as we've spoken previously, and as I read more about you and your background, it's truly like a merger of your two sides of what you have created in a career today. And I think that's so inspiring for other leaders to show and share what is possible.
Well, again, I'm so grateful to find myself where I am. I have to say, it wasn't like I had a grand plan, you know? I wasn't one of those people who just somehow always knew exactly what they wanted and took those very, specific steps. I mean, I did that as a dancer. That I did know, from a very young age. I loved dance and I took exactly the steps that you take to become a professional dancer. But once I had to move out of that and into the next phase of my life, I really didn't know what I was working towards or what I even wanted. And so each step that I took was a step forward without a defined goal. And I do think that's really important to say, because just because you don't know what that end goal is does not mean you shouldn't keep trying new things and taking a step forward, no matter if it requires, a lot of energy and a lot of your time, because I would not be where I am now had I not, you know, really sort of diligently kept working. And I tried so many things. I did a lot of things before I found myself to where I am. And, it's sort of that graphic of like the iceberg where you just see the little tip and it's like, oh, everything just, fell into place. But underneath that is the years of work and maybe different paths and directions. But it all eventually, leads you to really who you can be and reaching your potential. It really, I think that is. And so I'm very grateful that, again, having a support system that, was there for me along the way. Because believe me, there's a lot of times when you feel discouraged. There are a lot of times when you're absolutely exhausted. But, to just keep going and know that even though you don't have necessarily a defined end or a goal, you're going somewhere. Like you say, I took this business degree and working at Goldman Sachs, and then, like, oh, wow, being able to merge that with this, 20 plus year career as a dancer, this is a dream for me now.
I have to say, in listening to you speak, so many things are coming full circle for me. Because I remember when I opened my company, Slater Success, and that's a solid 17 plus years ago, I had no idea what I was doing with this. First of all, the coaching space 18 years ago was an unknown. It was complete unknown. And I didn't know I was going to build then what I ended up building today. I just knew that I was ready to make a change, and I knew there was things I was good at and things I knew, and I knew there was things I didn't know and I was going to learn more about. And let's see what happens. And I was willing to, as a dancer, and when you're learning something new, a new piece of choreography or a new movement, there's a solid chance you might fall on your butt. And I did that numerous times in my life. And I was like, okay, well, I already fell down. I'm still here. Like this, I'll figure it out as I go. And Slater's Success has become my merger of my business knowledge for over 30 years, but just kind of putting numbers out there. And my background and my creativity of how I see business and strategic planning is looking at things in a unique way. And I don't think many people I can talk or share that with or get it like you do, because there's this background that you're spent 20 some odd years in practice, practice, practice. People's like, how do you, Ivy, when things go bad, how do you pull yourself together? It's like, well, because you just went back to class the next day. Nobody thought twice about it. And in business, when you take that and apply it to business, it's like, yeah, things are going to go wrong. You're not going to have every day as a banner day. You're just going to go back to that office or back to that desk or back to that idea and keep going.
Absolutely. And I think you point out something really important, and you learn this so much as a dancer. You're constantly striving for perfection. That goal is not attainable. It doesn't exist. So, like you say, you keep working to be better, to be the best that you can be at that moment. But to be able to keep that level of courage, so to speak, to keep moving forward and to keep trying, regardless of whatever quote failure you might think, you have. And I love that saying, they say, the harder you work and the more that you learn, and suddenly, the luckier you become. So it's really that, you are working towards something that's unknown, but be prepared for that unknown.
So let's talk about, how did you get to where you are today? You are the executive director of Baryshnikov Arts. Your journey is a journey, like most of our journeys have been a journey, and everybody's has different twists and turns. How did this become an opportunity and this become your next step in your career and in your life?
Sure. So there were a number of steps that I took before finding myself where I am today. As I mentioned, when I sort of got to that realization that my professional career as a dancer was coming to an end, I went to undergrad, got a business degree. From there, my curiosity, when I apply myself to something, I really do go all the way. So business school sort of engulfed me, and I was so curious about what a life in finance would be. So hence working at Goldman Sachs. Actually, while I was at Goldman Sachs, I got my master's in arts administration, because it was then that it started to percolate in my mind, the idea of merging these two parts of my life together. From there, I went and I worked in the finance department of Mark Morris Dance Group, a wonderful dance company. I had worked with Mark he's an incredible, one of my favorite choreographers. And I'd worked with him quite a number of times as a dancer. So very fortunate I got to have that learning experience of working in that area now. From there, I went to New York City Center and I worked in their programming department. So again, learning sort of another area of a arts organization. And then from there, and, again, sort of very grateful for how things fortuitously happened. But right before the pandemic, I happened to move upstate New York, and I became the executive director of a wonderful arts organization up there called Kotzbahn, and was fortunate to spend the entire pandemic actually up there. And this arts organization is situated on 153 acres right along the Hudson River. And it's just absolutely
Beautiful.
stunning.
It's a beautiful area.
Beautiful.
We know it well.
Absolutely. It's in Tivoli, New York, very close to Rhinebeck. And I can't imagine a better place to have been during the pandemic. And it was an incredible experience. The company really flourished while I was there and during this period. And then from there, that's how I find myself now here at Baryshnikov Arts. But, as you know, I've known Misha for a very long time. I met him first as a student when I was 15 years old, when I first auditioned for the school. And, many years later, I also danced in his modern dance company, which is White Oak Dance Project. So, Misha in many ways has been a mentor throughout my education as a ballet dancer, and then through my professional life. He came to visit quite a few of our performances up at Kotzbahn. And so, that is sort of how it came about.
So one of the things I'm hearing as a subtext is one of our core values here is the keeping of relationships.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is so important. I mean, developing strong relationships that and I've said this so much before, like building a support system and a network for yourself. This is also where you learning from others, who have more experience than you. And then you mentioned how many, ex dancers are going to be working at Goldman. Now that I find myself where I am, I speak to a lot of younger dancers who are reaching out to me and saying, I'm starting to think about what my next step should be after I am so I am so happy to be able to impart any, of my experience to help, the upcoming generation. But we're also connected, right? Those that came before us, those that come after us, those who we are, working, side by side with now. And I do think that having that network and those relationships make all the difference in the world. Nothing can be done, on your own, really. And it makes it more fun as well, right?
100%. And I want to ask you, what would you share as we come to our close? What would you share as a top tip from you for other women leaders?
I think, I will say so much of my journey here really benefited from having, whether it's one or five or, two friendships or family members or whoever it is that, you know, reminds you that you are capable, that you are incredible, that you are special, because it's so easy to lose confidence or doubt yourself or wonder, is this the right step? Is that the right step? I'm not, you can get so in your head. And I do think that being able to have a trustworthy group circle, really is helped me so much. And then, in the end, do what you love. I think that then it doesn't feel like work necessarily. Successes or failures don't really matter. This is your life. This is your one and beautiful life, as the poet Mary Oliver says. And I think now I'm in my 50s, and I'm really starting to recognize what is important. And I do think that hard work is absolutely, important. What you love is incredible if you have that ability to choose, keeping those that you trust close to you and, never giving up. Like life can be wonderful and gratitude for the opportunities that come to you. And yeah, I think, there's so many incredible women out there who are doing amazing things. You are one of them. And, it's all possible.
And I agree wholeheartedly. Everything is possible when you're open to possibility. And when you're open to possibility and you show up with that open heart, open mind, opportunity shows up. It's exactly what you said before. It's amazing how much luckier we get when our dedication, our perseverance, and our work ethic precedes us. I think we need to work smart. I think there's so much out there for us. And I know, speaking for myself, I will say I'm always in the learning stage. When I stop learning, I stop growing. That means I'm kind of done with life. I'm not there. And every woman out there, there's so many women who are such inspirations like you, Sonia, who have taken maybe not what we would expect as a career path. And it's been a new career path because we get to learn from how you can be interested in a variety of different things at different stages, pull it together and create your own unique journey.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. And I think it's just really wonderful to be able to have those opportunities.
So, Sonia, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story.
Thank you so much, Ivy. So wonderful to be here.
And listeners, at this point of the show, this is how we close. Take a deep breath in. Enjoy that. Enjoy it. And say, wow, I listened to an amazing woman leader. What is your takeaway? What is the impact on you? What's your aha? Jot it down somewhere. Doesn't matter if it's a phone or a piece of paper. Jot it down and look at it and make the decision on what's the one action you could commit to from what your takeaway is and give yourself the gift of that action. Thank you for joining us and thank you for staying tuned. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it forward with other people and other leaders who will enjoy it. Hit subscribe and we'll be back next week with more wonderful guests like Sonia and some great content. See you next time.